Clara signed her death warrant when she decided to date a married man. 6 months earlier, Clara had been the girl her roommates called Holy Mary. She attended every lecture, never missed church on Sundays, and kept to herself in the room she shared with Samantha and Rejoice. While her roommates jumped from party to party in expensive wigs and designer clothes, Clara sold underwear in hostels to make ends meet. Everything changed in her final year. When her parents could no longer send money regularly, the underwear business barely covered her food. She watched Samantha and Rejoice return from parties with bundles of cash, new phones, and shopping bags filled with things Clara could only dream of owning. The pressure mounted with each passing week until one Friday night, exhausted and desperate, Clara finally agreed to follow them to a party. The club was loud and overwhelming, but Felix noticed her immediately. He was older, well-dressed, and persistent in a way that felt flattering rather than threatening. They exchanged numbers that night, and within days he was texting her constantly. The meeting started casually, but soon they were dating, and Clara's life transformed overnight. New clothes appeared in her wardrobe, her old phone was replaced with the latest model, and money for food was never an issue anymore. Her roommates celebrated her good fortune and told her she was lucky to have found a man who took her seriously. The first warning came through a text message from an unknown number telling her to leave her husband alone. Clara confronted Felix, but he denied being married. Then the next day, the same unknown number sent wedding pictures showing Felix in a sharp suit standing beside a beautiful woman in white. When she showed him the evidence, he could no longer lie and simply told her it didn't matter. Clara wanted to end things immediately, but Samantha and Rejoice talked her out of it. They told her she was doing nothing wrong, that Felix was the married one and he should be the one taking responsibility. The wife was probably just a frustrated woman lashing out at the wrong person. Clara convinced herself they were right and stayed. More messages came over the following weeks, each one more threatening than the last. Clara blocked the number and pushed the warnings out of her mind. Felix continued to spoil her, and life became comfortable in ways she had never experienced. Months passed, and the threats faded into distant memory. She started believing that maybe the wife had given up or accepted the situation. Her roommates assured her that married men had side chicks all the time, and nothing ever happened to those girls. On a Tuesday evening, Clara left campus alone after her last lecture. The sun was setting, and she was thinking about what to cook for dinner when a black SUV pulled up beside her. Everything happened so fast that she barely had time to scream. Strong hands grabbed her and pulled her into the vehicle. A cloth pressed against her nose and mouth released a sickly sweet smell. The walls tilted and went dark. When she woke up, her hands were bound and she was moving. A woman's voice cut through the darkness, cold and calm, more terrifying than any scream could ever be. The blindfold came off and Clara found herself in an empty warehouse staring at a woman whose expensive perfume filled the stale air. Gloria sat on a plastic chair with her legs crossed, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Clara's entire tuition. Her face was beautiful and completely calm, like she was attending a business meeting rather than holding someone captive. She looked nothing like the angry, desperate wife Clara had imagined all these months. Gloria introduced herself without emotion and explained that she was Felix's wife. She didn't raise her voice or show any sign of anger. Instead, she spoke like a teacher correcting a slow student. She told Clara that this wasn't personal, that she simply had a system for handling girls who got involved with her husband. Gloria had known about Clara from the very first day Felix brought her to his apartment. She knew everything because she owned that apartment, paid for his car, and funded the lifestyle that had attracted Clara in the first place. The revelation hit Clara like cold water. Felix wasn't the successful man she thought he was. He was Gloria's investment, and she protected her investments carefully. Gloria explained that she was far wealthier than Felix, that her family owned businesses across 3 states, and that she could make people disappear without anyone asking questions. She had been watching Clara for months, reading every text message, tracking every movement, waiting to see if Clara would be smart enough to walk away. Clara tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Gloria continued talking and told her about the other girls before her. Some had received beatings severe enough to send them to the hospital with stories about armed robbers. Others had simply vanished from campus, and their families were still searching for them years later. A few had been sent abroad to Gloria's contacts in Libya and Dubai, where they now worked in situations they could never escape from. Gloria's voice remained steady as she described these fates like she was reading items from a shopping list. Days passed and Clara remained in that warehouse, with minimal food and no contact with the outside world. Gloria's men took shifts guarding her, and their faces showed no sympathy when she cried or begged. Gloria visited twice more, each time spending only a few minutes to remind Clara of what was coming. Felix never came, and Clara finally understood that he had been through this before. He knew exactly what his wife did to his girlfriends, and he never tried to stop it because Gloria's money was more important than any of them. Back on campus, Samantha and Rejoice had reported Clara missing after she didn't return for 3 days. Campus security filed a report, and Clara's parents traveled from the village, devastated and confused. Felix played his part perfectly, showing up at the hostel with tears in his eyes, telling everyone how worried he was about his girlfriend. The police asked him questions, but he had answers for everything. No one suspected the well-dressed man who seemed so genuinely concerned. On the 7th day, Gloria returned with her final decision. Clara would be sent abroad to a contact in Libya who specialized in receiving girls like her. She would work in brothels servicing men who paid in cash until she was too sick or too old to be useful anymore. There would be no passport, no papers, and no way home. Girls who tried to run were beaten or killed. Gloria had been doing this for 5 years, and not one girl had ever made it back to Nigeria to tell her story. Clara begged and promised to disappear, to leave the country on her own, to never speak Felix's name again. She offered to sign anything, do anything, if Gloria would just let her go. But Gloria only smiled for the first time since Clara had met her, and said that letting her go would send the wrong message to the next girl. The flight was arranged for 3 days from now, and Clara would be ready whether she wanted to or not. Clara had 72 hours before the journey that would erase her existence, and she had no plan except to survive. They moved her to a different location on the 8th day, keeping her blindfolded throughout the drive. When they finally removed the cloth from her eyes, she found herself in a small boys' quarters behind what looked like an abandoned house. The security was lighter here with only 2 guards who rotated shifts every 12 hours. They gave her more food now because Gloria wanted her looking healthy for the journey. The girls were being shipped out through the ports in the south, hidden in cargo containers with other trafficked women heading to Libya. Sick or malnourished girls drew unwanted attention from Gloria's contacts on the other side, who paid good money for healthy workers. Clara watched the guards carefully during those 3 days. The older one was strict and never let his attention wander, but the younger one got careless on his night shifts. He scrolled through his phone for hours and sometimes dozed off around 3 in the morning. On the second night, Clara noticed he had left the bathroom window slightly open to let out smoke from his cigarettes. It was small, but Clara was slim enough to fit through if she could reach it. The night before her flight, Clara waited until she heard the young guard's breathing become heavy and regular. Her hands shook as she pushed the bathroom window wider, trying not to make any sound. The metal frame creaked once and she froze completely, but the guard didn't stare. She pulled herself up and squeezed through the narrow opening, scraping her arms and legs on the rough edges. The drop to the ground was higher than she expected and she landed hard on her ankle, but swallowed the cry of pain that tried to escape. She ran without knowing where she was going, limping on her injured ankle through dark streets that all looked the same. Behind her, she heard shouting as the guards discovered her escape. Car engines roared to life and headlights swept across the roads. Clara ducked into a market that had just closed, crawling under tables and hiding behind stacks of empty crates. The guards' voices came closer and she pressed herself against the ground, not breathing, not moving, praying they wouldn't find her. Hours passed before she dared to move again. Dawn was breaking when she finally crawled out from her hiding place. The market traders were beginning to arrive, and she must have looked terrible because an older woman selling clothes immediately asked if she was all right. Clara broke down and begged the woman to help her call her parents. The woman took her inside her shop and let her use a phone while giving her water and bread. Her father answered on the first ring, his voice hoarse from days of no sleep. Clara could barely speak through her tears, but managed to tell him she was alive and gave him the woman's address. Her parents arrived 7 hours later, having asked for directions multiple times to find the address Clara had given them. Clara's mother couldn't stop crying and holding her, while her father kept thanking the woman who had helped his daughter. They wanted to take Clara straight to the nearest police station to report everything, but the moment her father mentioned police, Clara grabbed his arm with such terror that he stopped mid-sentence. She begged them not to go to any station, not to file reports, not to involve any authorities. She made them understand that Gloria was too powerful and too connected. Going after her would only get Clara killed, and possibly her family too. Her parents tried to reason with her, saying they needed to get justice and stop this woman from hurting others, but Clara became hysterical at the suggestion. Her father finally saw the genuine fear in his daughter's eyes and agreed to take her home immediately without involving anyone. The journey back to the village was silent. Clara stared out the window at the passing landscape and realized she was leaving behind everything she had worked for. Her university dreams were over. She couldn't go back to that campus, couldn't risk being seen by Gloria's people, couldn't take the chance that they might finish what they started. At home, Clara refused to leave the house for months. She jumped at every knock on the door and couldn't sleep without checking the windows multiple times. Her parents tried to convince her to report Gloria, to let the authorities handle it, but Clara would become hysterical at the mere suggestion. She made them promise on everything they held sacred that they would never ever contact the police about this. Her mother cried every night seeing her daughter so broken and afraid, but Clara insisted that staying silent was the only way to stay alive. She eventually started seeing a counselor her mother found in the next town. The nightmares came every night, showing her that warehouse and Gloria's calm. She enrolled in a computer training center and learned basic skills to keep her mind occupied. After 8 months, she got a job as a sales girl in a small phone accessories shop owned by her father's friend. It wasn't the graduate life she had imagined, but it was safe, and Gloria couldn't reach her here. Clara never heard from Samantha or Rejoice again. They never called, never visited, never even sent a message to ask if she was alive. As far as Clara knew, they were still going to parties, dating married men, and collecting their bundles of cash. They had probably replaced her with another roommate and forgotten she ever existed. Sometimes Clara wondered if they even remembered the girl they used to call Holy Mary, or if they ever thought about where she had disappeared to for those terrifying days. But she knew the answer. Girls like Samantha and Rejoice never looked back and never learned until it was their turn to face the consequences. 2 years later, Clara had learned to function again, though the fear never completely left. She helped her mother with the farming and worked at the shop during market days. It wasn't the life she had planned, but she was alive, and that was more than some girls could say. Sometimes, she saw posts on social media showing Felix still living lavishly with Gloria by his side at social events. They looked perfect together, a power couple that everyone admired. Nobody knew what Gloria did to protect her marriage, and nobody would believe it if they were told. Clara had tried to warn a few young girls in her area when she heard them talking about dating older men in the city, but they looked at her like she was just a bitter person who couldn't handle competition. The lesson Clara learned was simple, but it had cost her everything to understand it. Some mistakes don't give you a second chance, and some people are more dangerous than they appear. Money and gifts always come with a price, and by the time you realize you were wrong, it's often too late to fix it. Clara survived, but survival isn't the same as living. She would never finish university, never become the educated woman she had dreamed of being, never feel completely safe again. The story ended with Clara alive but diminished, free but forever looking over her shoulder.